there's a moment in this film where his accent suddenly changes.
I literally, not one moment, more than one moment. I know, I was like, where are you from, Ray?
Hello and welcome to Cruise Next, your favourite film podcast. My name is James Albarn. I'm joined as ever by Elsa Grace. Hello, Elsa. How are you?
I'm well.
You're well.
What did I say I was going to do? A disclaimer.
Yes. So what's your disclaimer?
Well, actually, I said
Elsa
foreshadowing.
hasn't watched the film.
I have not watched any films. What is film? No, my disclaimer is that I have very bad brain fog at the moment.
Ah, okay.
That old wily Minx Rona caught me, and my brain is not. There you go.
There you go.
I was going to say my brain is not occupying. What she means is operating in the way that it usually is. So if I might be fumbling over some words,
no more than usual.
We pray. Pretty sure I did see this film.
What is this film? Well, this film. So last week we watched A Private War, starring Rosamund Pike and Jamie Dornan, which we both. Sorry, I'm not even going to give the audience context about that. And we very much enjoyed that film. Well, enjoy is probably the wrong word. We thought it was very good. Enjoy is a difficult word because it was very sad, but it was a good film.
But as a piece of art, as a piece of film, it was wonderful. But this will be a very different caliber of episode, this podcast.
So as always, we jumped into the credits of A Private War, and we found our next crew member, Cruise Next, and we arrived on the aerial drone pilot, mainly for that amazing drone shot that was in A Private War. That's why we picked it. And to be fair, the drone work in this, I can imagine. Well, actually, I don't have to imagine. I saw it. Was good. The drone work was probably one of the only good things about this film.
Dionys did not disappoint.
Dionys Frei got us to this film this week, which is Point Break. And I know you're thinking, Point Break? What a classic. No.
Catherine Bigelow, my goodness.
Not the 1991 Point Break starring Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. No. We are watching and reviewing this week the 2015 Erickson Core directed Point Break.
What kind of people are we dealing with here? A set of perps with a very unusual skill set. Utah, I need a theory.
So why not deploy your chute above the jungle and escape like a normal person?
Because I'm thinking these aren't normal people, sir.
I believe that, like me, the people behind these robberies are extreme athletes, using their skills to disrupt the international financial markets. And they don't care who gets killed in the process. They call me Bodhi.
There's a few $1 billion of gold down there.
You're gonna steal it?
No, we're going to liberate it.
Elsa, would you care to give the audience a little bit of rundown of the plot of Point Break 2015?
I mean, what can I say, James? It is what it is. You put it in as the wild card. How do you feel about that decision? I think it was a mistake.
I will never get the time back.
That's the thing about time, isn't it?
Never go back.
Yeah, never go back.
114 minutes.
114 minutes.
Although I will point out, it's 114 minutes, right? But actually, the total length of the end credits of this film is 13 and a half minutes. So it's more like 100 minutes.
I know. I saw that too. Obscene. But the stunts, the number of crew involved in the stunts in this film is, I've never seen anything like it. It's staggering. And they have different stunt teams for every country. And they filmed all over the shop.
Yeah.
All of the natural sort of landscapes and of the ordeals, which we'll get into in a second, are really there. They really film there. So there's a huge amount of crew involved in this film, which is very exciting. It made my choosing the crew interesting.
Yes.
But okay, we'll do a rundown. We'll do a rundown of the film. There's not that much I can say that is that different from the original Point Break, but
I'd say it's very different from the original.
no, it's not plot wise. It's pretty much exactly the same. It just doesn't contain the same narrative.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like there's not as much of a heavy focus on surfing. It's just on extreme sports in general. But essentially it follows the character Johnny Utah, who is a new green babyface FBI agent, and his efforts to thwart a group of risk-taking sort of vigilantes in a way, and he goes undercover with them for several weeks and sort of falls in love with their lifestyle and the bromance of it all, and then has to face his own sort of moral convictions as to whether or not he wants to let his birds go or whether he wants to use his long arm of the law to bring them to justice. The way that it sort of differs from the original is that in the original, Bodhi, played by Patrick Swayze, is very much using the money that they're stealing from banks and things like that to finance essentially just like wild surf trips around the world. They're chasing the perfect wave.
And that's how they figure out that it's surfers committing these bank robberies, right? It's because they look at the surf seasons around, like they're following
they're just
surf.
following the swell essentially. Whereas with this film, they've tried to sort of put in a narrative of like some sort of hippy dippy respect for nature sort of element, where there's something called the Ozaki 8. And what that is that there are 8 seemingly impossible feats. And if you can do all 8 and not die, you reach some sort of state of spiritual bliss. You reach a state of nirvana. And along the way, you have to give back to nature what you take from it, or what we take from it. So
and they do that by like
just ridiculous things like throwing diamonds at people like in slums in India, or throwing money at villages in Mexico. Like, what is it? Dollars? Yeah, it's like paper dollars. Just things like that. Blowing up a gold mine. Just, it is what it is, isn't it? But so, yeah, you have the similar kind of plot line. You've got exactly the same characters with exactly the same names. Although Johnny Utah towards the end says, or somewhere in the middle, honestly, time is very fluid with this film for me, says that Johnny Utah is not his real name. It's a nickname.
Oh, I've got issue with that. This is one of the notes I made. Can we jump into that, or should we circle back to it?
To be honest, I think we're done with the plot, aren't we?
Okay, so the issue I have with this, so there's a moment where...
Let's get into
this. So there's a moment where they're sitting on a mountain, Johnny Utah and Bodhi. Johnny Utah played by... I have to look this up because I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else. Luke Bracey. He has also appeared in Home and Away.
Home and Away.
Apparently he's in Hacksaw Ridge and a few other kind of action.
As what? An extra?
Don't know.
I like that film.
Luke Bracey, played by Johnny Utah. No, Johnny Utah, played by Luke Bracey, and Edgar Ramirez's Bodhi are sitting on a mountain, as you do. And I don't really know what they're talking about that before. I don't think they're talking about anything before. I think the scene starts with Johnny Utah.
Oh, I know where I know Luke Bracey from. He's in The Holiday with Emma Roberts, which is
Okay.
like a really good bit of trash if anyone's needing it.
Okay. And he says he turns to Bodhi and he says, "My mother was a Ute Indian, which is why I'm called Johnny Utah."
Because Utah means mountain people or something like that.
But so I have a few problems with this. The obvious one being the fact that
I look at Luke Bracey and I think indigenous person.
well, I also have an issue with the fact that if you really were descended, like if your mother really was a Native American, you wouldn't use the word Indian because that's generally considered offensive to Native American people. So that's a kind of weird scripting choice from the get-go. Maybe
Also,
no one
what
was thinking of that in 2015. I don't know, but
such an unnecessary plot point. Do you know what I mean? Like that.
Like,
why was that in there?
So I have the so apart from the slightly offensive way they said it, I've just got an issue with the fact that why do we have to explain why Johnny Utah is called Johnny Utah? Just call him Johnny Utah.
Yeah, that was never a thing in the original, was it? It was never.
It was just his name. His name was Johnny Utah. Maybe they think, oh, it's too silly now of a name.
Well, then
it's
choose a
too-
different name.
And then
Also, like, what indigenous ancestry do you know where they're like, oh yeah, I'm like whatever Michigan. I'm
But they
like
did
who
this-
heard Utah and went, yeah, that sounds like a native.
they
I
did
don't know.
this with what annoys me about it is there seems to be like a slight trend of this happening where they've done it in a few other films. The main one that springs to mind is the Han Solo Star Wars film, which is like for anyone who hasn't seen it, is like a spin-off Star Wars film where it's like a young Han Solo not being played by Harrison Ford.
That's very good. I like
Yeah,
it.
it's a good film, but there's a moment in it where they feel the need to explain how he gets the name Han Solo, and it's because he's called Han and he has no family with him and doesn't know where his family came from, so the Imperial officer gives him the name Han Solo because he is Han and he is Solo. And it's just like, why that's just his name. We don't need to explain everything.
Yeah, writers out there, what's in a name? You know, a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet.
And I just
Leave it
thought,
there.
and they even did so. And then just this is the other thing I noted down because it really pissed me off. If you haven't been able to tell, listeners, I don't like this film.
Well, let's not jump the gun, James.
There was another point in the film, which is earlier on, where they're about to do a bit of wingsuit jumping. And Bodhi turns to Johnny Utah, not his name, and says, "You've got to go." Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like you've got to go with the flow, and you've got to let the wind take you, and you've got to find your line. And then another guy goes, who's part of the gang, goes, "Otherwise, you'll hit your point." And Johnny Utah goes, "What point?" And the other guy goes, "The point where you break." Point Break. It's just like because the title of Point Break no longer makes sense in this film because it's got nothing to do with surfing, and so they had to try and they even do it on the poster as well for the film. It's like finding your breaking point. Point Break. Finding your breaking point was the tagline for this film.
Finding your breaking point.
Yeah, find your breaking point.
I think I found mine at minute 6.
So you texted me yesterday when you finished the film saying it's surprisingly good.
Yeah. Do you know why that was?
Go on.
It's because I thought he watched half of it a few weeks ago, and that lucky devil is going to start watching it again halfway through, and he's not going to have to go through the continuous pain that I have just done. So I thought I'd make
I
a
started
funny.
again. I watched it from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was trying to be funny. I was trying to be like, oh yeah, no, it's brilliant. You should definitely watch it. Like, do you remember in Friends when Chandler goes to that one-woman show? And he tells them it's like the best thing that he's ever seen. So that they all go because he gets stood up. He has to sit through it on his own with this very angry lady like shouting at him about her first period. So he tells everyone it's really great. So they go and they sit in it. And then he's like, fuck you guys, and then runs out. That's sort of what I was doing. Yeah, I mean, let's just... Before we move on completely, I just want to circle back to the name thing because there was something else in here with names. So we've got Johnny Utah, we've got Point Break, where they just feel the need to explain people's names. And there was another moment of that with Teresa Palmer's character, which, by the way, look, we'll get into Teresa Palmer's character, but Teresa Palmer's character, whose name was Samsara, and then she said, she was like, it means nature. It doesn't mean nature. No, it doesn't, Teresa Palmer. It's like it's a very old. It's to do with Hinduism and Buddhism, and essentially it's like the cyclical nature of life and death and rebirth. And it's not,
I guess
very
it does in a way.
loosely you could say it's about
if you're
nature.
really simplifying it, then yes.
Yeah. But it's not, and that bothered me, and I was just like, stop giving all of like...
Also, she wasn't called the sort of equivalent character, although I feel bad to say the equivalent character in the original because...
Not even fucking close.
Not even fucking close. I think she was called Tyler, wasn't she? In the original. She wasn't called Samsara.
Yeah,
anyway.
no.
She was called Tyler, I think.
Yeah, she was, and she was a real bloody character. She had actual grit to her and personality.
We'll get to that because there's a lot I want to say about that character.
But basically, that was another thing with names in this film where I was just like, "What are they doing? Why would they choose?" Do you know what I mean? It would be like me choosing the name. I don't know. I'm trying to spirituality. My name's Spirituality, and then someone's like, what does it mean? And I'm like, the color blue. Like, it's just the most random. I don't know, I didn't like it. I just thought it was pointless. Should we talk about stunts?
Yeah,
because
okay.
we're already shitting all over this film, but let's be very clear, the stunts in this film were absolutely exceptional. They were really, I thought they were really
with some
strong.
caveats, I think.
Yeah,
but carry on.
Well, so also for the surf scene, so I don't know. So both James and I enjoy the occasional surf, don't we? But I don't know how much you watch of professional surfing, whereas I do watch the competitions. And
I've watched it before. I don't watch it often. But
so did you get the cameos?
No, probably not.
Right. Okay. So there were quite a few big name
surfers.
Yeah.
Right.
In this film. One that made me, I had to pause it and rewind it. I was like, no way. Laird Hamilton, who is a huge name in big wave world, was actually the co-creator of the tow-in surfing for big waves. And he was the guy on the jet ski that towed Johnny and was like, set of the day's coming. And I thought that was was like a little nice little shout out.
If this was a film about surfing.
A little salty there. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And like on the boat party, like you see some others, and like all of they went to, where did they go? They went to Tehupo. They went to where else? I'm getting this, my brain stuff coming. Sorry. Oahu in Hawaii. They went to like all the big wave spots, and actually while they were filming, they had cameras everywhere on like drones and on the jet skis and on the boats, and a few people had body cams as well, like trying to catch as much as they can because they were all pro surfers out there. They weren't stunt guys. They actually did catch on film one of the biggest waves in like the last 10 years, like the biggest swell in 10 years in that spot. So I thought that was like a pretty cool scene. I just like slightly ruined by Luke Bracey and Ray Winstone being like, have you surfed before? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, but have you surfed like this before? It's like, no, I have to put a soundbite into that. But, like, I was just like, oh, for God's sake. Ray Winstone also in this film, his character equivalent in the original.
Gary Busey has a lot more to do. To be fair to Ray Winstone, he has nothing to do in this.
There's nothing. There was one scene where he was on the phone.
A lot of the original Point Break.
Yeah, and he was bloody great in it. And it actually, like, I remember every time I watch that, when Gary gets shot, I physically feel it. Like I
Yeah.
hate it. Was Ray, I was like, could take him or leave him. He's not.
Did you notice the one? I'm going to put a clip in. There's a moment in this film where his accent suddenly changes.
I literally, not one moment,
He's
more
suddenly
than one
American.
moment. I know.
He's
I was like,
suddenly American.
where are you from, Ray?
And I'm
Where
not
are you?
sure which one he's supposed to be because he is an FBI agent, but he's based in London.
No, but at the start they say he's an Englishman. He's an acquired taste, but I think that you'll like him.
At some point, he's
and then he's American, and then he's a bit Australian. But see, there's films that Ray has been in before where he's supposed to be American, and he's not. He's not
Ray
a
Winstone's
gifted
never
accent
been
actor, is he?
great at accents.
No, but yeah. And there's one scene where he's stood by his car, holding a cup of coffee or something, answers the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, been here 2 weeks or whatever. Like, better get on with it." Or something. And then it cuts out, and that's his whole scene. And I was just like, did they bring that poor man out for a night shoot to deliver those 3 lines and then make him go back home?
Yeah, because he's on the phone and he's like, I don't think we're getting anywhere. We're just going to have to call it. And then he gets a text from Luke Bracey saying, I'm in. And then he's like, And then that's the
never
scene.
mind. Cut.
I don't know. There was no point in that as well.
Yeah, it was so stupid.
What are you doing here, Utah?
What do you mean?
I remember you. Your reputation. More balls than talent. Some said maybe that was why you were so good. Because you lacked fear. But what I saw on that wave yesterday, that was different. You lacked respect. There was no connection.
There was no beauty.
Maybe I'm chasing something, like you are.
What do you think I'm chasing?
You're chasing the 8.
That's a myth.
But the real question is, what are you after?
So the thing I have an issue with the stunts is because there is a lot of it that is done for real, and they pride themselves on that. Whenever you watch anything about behind the scenes stuff, it's all like, yeah, we did the stunts for real, and like we actually did the wingsuit jump, and we and like that is all to be commended. It does all look great. Apart from then, often in these stunts, they then try to. I think what works so well about the original film in the stunt category, right, in the surfing of Point Break, is, and it's because of the time it was filmed. It was released in 1991, so probably filming around 1990, maybe even 1989. You don't have the ability to put Keanu Reeves' face on the surfer that is doing the surfing. So all of the shots of, if Keanu Reeves needs to be surfing a huge wave, or Patrick Swayze needs to be surfing a huge wave, obviously they're not doing that. So you get a big wide, epic wide of the wave, and that's that character surfing. The problem we have now, where you can put Luke Bracey's face on a completely different person's body, is that then you get those shots, but for whatever reason in this film, they just don't. I don't think they work, and they don't look right, and they don't really cut with the real footage of these great stunts. And then when you cut to a close-up of Luke Bracey supposedly free solo climbing up a rock, it just looks really awkward a lot of the times, and it kind of spoiled the stunts for me, because I don't need to, like, I can know, like, I can imagine, right, that it's these 2 guys doing it. I don't need to physically see their face for it to do it. And it's really off-putting in the first big surfing scene, because you can tell they've put, Edgar Ramirez's head on some other guy's body, and doesn't quite look right, and it really just took me out of those moments, and it kind of felt real shame to me that like you spent all this money, all this time, all this effort getting these amazing stunts, and then you've kind of spoilt it a bit with kind of some slightly dodgy editing and some slightly dodgy CGI at points. I just didn't...
The worst being Teresa Palmer surfing. That was like watching... Do you remember that advert for the dog food where they've got a dog on a surfboard?
Yeah.
That was all I could think about watching her surf. I was like, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Or the very end scene where Bodhi... so they do this pretty much... They do an inferior version of the ending of Point Break, where Bodhi goes...
Oh, for God's sake. It's like they
into the
needed
waves.
everything to be more epic in this film. So instead of having that really nice moment of like
He runs
kind
up
of
the beach.
calm with that Catherine Bigelow put in of them being on the beach, and there's a lot of like non-verbal communication until they start like fighting and rolling around in the sea. Like it's a really incredible scene. That's one of my most favorite scenes ever. That last scene on the beach. They're like, yeah, let's like have him drop in on a chopper, and then it's like, and he has to tie the steering wheel of the boat because he's in the storm, and then like it was just so ridiculous. I just didn't like it. Everything in this film was trying to be bigger and better and bolder, and it just...
And nothing was.
It lost all character. It lost all soul. There was no soul to this movie.
That's the key with this film. There is no soul. So the stunts, like you can say the stunts are amazing, but
that's all it is. It's like watching a Red Bull movie on YouTube. It's not.
And so when you see these stunts, they don't excite me because the story isn't exciting me. The characters aren't exciting me. There's no heart. I don't give a shit if one of the characters falls off a rock. Like it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything. And so that end scene where Bodhi goes off into the sea and Johnny Utah lets him go because he's never coming back. It's slightly ruined by CGI, I think, because I can't tell in that last scene, and someone might be listening to this screaming. I can't tell if in that last scene, I'm not sure a lot of that is real. I think most of that last scene is CGI.
It was also acted very
because
poorly.
It looks really dodgy. And it looks particularly dodgy when the surfer is surfing the wave and then the wave engulfs him. In Point Break, they pretty much do that for real.
Yeah.
And it looks incredible. Whereas in this version, you can tell that he hasn't gone under properly, and that it's almost like they're trying to... I don't know how to describe this in audio without showing you the visual, but it's almost like they filmed someone surfing and then they've painted it onto this other wave, this scene, and then they're delaying the surfer so that the wave engulfs him, whereas actually he surfed through and was out the other end, because it looks like he's not properly moving, if you see what I mean. It's really hard to describe on audio, but if you go and watch it, you will see what I mean, where it's almost like it's like someone's holding him back constantly, like with a mouse on a computer, and then the wave overtakes him. And there was little moments like that just completely like threw me out of what I was supposed to be engaging with.
Yeah, I think that the CGI mixes and the stunts were done quite badly. I also think the ADR in this film was not good.
Do you feel like everything was dubbed in this film? Because
so I don't want to say that, because I was worried. I was like, is this my streaming? Like, is this what I'm watching it on? Is that why this is bad? But I've tried on a few different sources, and it was, for particular scenes especially, it's not good. There was like almost a very like millisecond delay in almost everything.
And they almost sounded like they were all in a studio no matter where they were.
There's one particular scene on the boat where Edgar Ramirez and Luke Bracey are sitting reasonably far apart on this boat, and they're having a conversation about life and whatever, nature, some bollocks. And I'm sorry, shout out to nature. I love you, really. And they sound like they're in a studio, but they're sitting on an open air deck of a very big yacht. And I was just like, that's so poor, man. For a budget of a film that's, what was it, like 103 million? I wrote 105 mil
they spent all
budget
the money on,
of this.
right?
Yeah, we know where the money's worth.
Because that's the other thing with this film. When they're not doing the stunts, the film looks incredibly cheap. There's one scene where Ray Winstone and Johnny Utah, I'm getting character names and actor names mixed up, but I can't remember what. Luke Bracey and Ray Winstone are in a car together, and it is the worst like green screen car effect that I have ever seen. Like, honestly, the car scenes in The Big Bang Theory look better than the car scenes in this Point Break film. Like,
no disrespect to BBT, shout out.
No, like, but that shows
good.
you, like, on a sitcom budget, which admittedly Big Bang Theory is one of the biggest shows on television for a time, so they probably had a decent budget. But a sitcom budget makes it look better than a film that is worth 103 million. So you can 105 million. You can see where all of the money went, and it went on the stunts. Probably Ray Winstone.
Probably Ray bloody Winstone. But do you know what? The sponsorship in this film is also just...
Like when they had the big Oakley goggles.
Oakley, you got Monster on everything, GoPro, Arc'teryx, Land Rovers. Like, it's so in your face. It's really garish, the sponsorship in this. Which, like, yes, we get it. We get why you needed it. But
also, I think there's plenty of films that do that. Like, you know, and that is a kind of a fact of the modern blockbuster.
Yeah, do you remember in National Treasure we were talking about, was it the watch?
Oh, the watch, yeah.
He kept flashing his watch
but
around.
There's ways of doing it in a subtle fashion.
Yeah.
And there's
got sudden
Point Break
piece to
2015.
camera.
Yeah. Or there's that brilliant, I don't know if you've seen the scene, I can't remember which Transformers movie it is. But there's a Transformers movie with Mark Wahlberg. And there's a moment where...
that's the one with Haley Steinfeld?
Maybe.
Steinfeld? Bumblebee.
No. It's like one of the main Transformer films.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. I did
don't
not
know them.
keep watching them after the first one.
I don't think I've watched any of them. But there's a scene, right, in one of those Transformers films with Mark Wahlberg where the city... You know, it's the big action climax of the film, right? And there's a big battle going on in the city. And a huge lorry gets tipped over full of cans of Coca-Cola. It's a Coca-Cola lorry. And the cans roll out, and Mark Wahlberg, mid-battle, stops, picks up a can of Coke. Or it could be Pepsi. It's one of the two. Literally opens it, sips it. Like, in front of the camera. And then carries on.
His sugar levels were low. What do you mean? That seems super authentic.
But it's another example of the film having no soul. And actually, the whole idea that this film, that we're going to remake the original Point Break and have a huge amount of product placement seems to be completely counter to what the original film is
and
about.
the message of this film. Like, what are you guys trying to do? Like, I didn't get it. Yeah, it is just painful.
Came as fast as I could.
It's been 12 days.
I saw an opportunity. I couldn't break cover.
I put a 24-hour surveillance on Alfaric's hideaway. I know exactly what you were doing. Criminal masterminds, they're just kids partying away their lives on Alfaric's dime. The difference between them and you is you're doing it on the FBI's.
Pappas. Where does that leave you, huh? Hanging out on this dock while I'm on to something?
You're onto... Now, I'm sorry if this particular locale lacks the glamour you're accustomed to. For your information, this is how the real FBI works. It's dirty, it's pedestrian, and generally downright boring.
I can figure this out, Pappas. I just need more time.
Do you want to talk about Samsara?
Ah.
Played by Teresa Palmer.
Teresa Palmer was, I'm going to say it. I'm just going to say it. She was in this film as the boobs and the small waist. Like, there was no other reason for her being in this film. There was no emotional connection between her and Johnny Utah like there was with Tyler in the original film. There was no, like, she slightly furthers the narrative in the conversation that she has with Johnny, where she basically tells him that Bodhi was on the boat with Ozaki when Ozaki died, doing his ordeal for or doing his give back for the third ordeal.
But to be honest, you could have cut her and had Edgar Ramirez tell him about that.
Yeah.
Like, anyone could have
or
told
he could
him
have
that.
just found the article online.
Yeah, anyone
Do you
could
know
have
what I mean?
told him, yeah.
So she was just a bit of a nothing character, and also like you're never quite you're never really quite sure where she stands. You know, there's no So this is the thing about having like very one-dimensional female characters in movies that are purely there to serve the sort of, I don't know, satiate this sexual. What's it called? Like
Male gaze.
But no, what am I trying to say? It's that brain fog. Like coquette, like croquette.
Femme fatale. Kinda.
No, like it'll come to me later.
Okay.
But basically, like there was no substance to her. That character does not exist on a plane of its own.
Well, she was in the film to get shot by Johnny Utah.
No, but like that's the thing.
That's it.
Was she? Because they didn't have a strong enough. Like he was super mad about that, sure, but like he was
They got
already
over it very quickly.
Well, yeah, and he was already going for Bodhi at that point. It wasn't like a turning point where for his character where he was like, "Fuck this! I've just lost the woman that I love. I'm no longer torn as to whether I want to be with the FBI or with Bodhi. Like I know who I am now." There was no moment of that because their bond wasn't strong enough. Essentially, they had a few pretty like. I don't know, superficial conversations, sex on a fur rug in some sort of Nordic spa on a boat or something.
Yeah.
And then what? He thought that it was Bodhi and he shot her.
Well, to give context, should we talk about Tyler from the original? Because I feel bad talking about like a remake of a film. It's always difficult because you want to judge a film on its own merits and not compare it to, you know, another film, right?
Yeah.
Because it should stand on its own. But it's also very difficult when a film is, you know, literally remaking another film to not compare it to the original film. And so Laurie Petty's character Tyler in the original Point Break, I mean, maybe this is the influence of having Catherine Bigelow, a female director, on the film. You know, her character is much more fleshed out. But she's in it as she knows Bodhi. She's kind of slept with Bodhi before, and they're kind of like they're not together. And you know, she's friends with all of them. But she doesn't know. Does she know what they do? I don't think she knows that.
No,
they're bank
she doesn't.
Robbers. She doesn't know what they're bank robbers. She meets Keanu Reeves at the start of when Keanu Reeves first starts surfing. She pulls him out of the water because he
wipes out. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Doesn't know what he's doing, and she says, "You're an idiot. Basically, you can't be surfing like that." And then he convinces her to teach him how to surf, and in doing that, they become very close, and that starts the romance there, and then it culminates in Bodhi using her at the end to get to Johnny. He essentially kidnaps her at the end.
Well, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He kidnaps her.
He
holds her at gunpoint.
Holds her at gunpoint and kidnaps her at the end. And that's the... And there's also the moment in that film where she finds out that he's an FBI agent.
She holds him at gunpoint.
And she's very
Fucking great
angry
film.
about it.
Yeah.
Because she feels used, etc. There's more.
Did your parents even die? Is that what she says?
Yeah,
she has
she
that
does,
great,
yeah.
great fucking scene. Yeah. She's a character. She's a great character. She is a big part of, the plot of that film.
So the first time Johnny Utah meets Samsara, it means nature.
She's on the boat.
She's like,
the ocean doesn't just like make you feel so small, or like nature has a way of making you feel. So like she has one of those dippy shit moments. And then she's just like, ha, jumps into the water. No. They don't. She jumps into the water.
Oh, yeah, she never came.
And goes and holds a rock, goes in an underground cave. I'm just going to put it out there. This is something that I do in films when there is an underwater like free diving scene like this. I will hold my breath and I will see how realistic it is. Do you know what? It's not. No. It's not real. I've got excellent breath control. It's not realistic. Not only that, but they are properly swimming and holding these very heavy rocks. Man would have died. Man's not alive. Nah. So that was stupid. And then they come to the surface and they're both just like, and then like party together or whatever. And they don't have sex that time. They have sex like at the second boat party or something. And then...
But the point is, like in the original...
And then she also owns a chateau in France and is like rock climbing and making the lovely meal. And
then it comes, and then the how he shoots her is at one point they're robbing this tiny bank on a mountain. I can't remember why. And
because they catch the sponsor. They like arrest the sponsor so that Bodhi and his guys don't have any more income to complete the Ozaki 8. And so to do that, they have to rob a bank. And they choose to rob the one that the FBI are like, you'd be mad to rob this bank. There's one road leading down the mountain and that's it. And obviously that's the one that Bodhi goes for.
And they shoot an incredible amount of police officers. And then Johnny Utah gives chase to this girl.
Well, to what he thinks is Bodhi.
To what he thinks is Bodhi because she's in like a motorbike helmet and
which I'm just saying, there was a huge focus on the size of Teresa Palmer's chest in this film. There was a lot of close-up shots of her breast.
Suddenly gone.
And then apparently it's just not there when she's wearing her leathers for the bike riding.
He's seen them before.
That's what I'm saying, isn't it? Like, I don't get it. Surely he would have been like, Bodhi's cutting a nice shape in this bike suit.
And then she tries to shoot him. So before she can, he shoots her. And then he takes off her helmet and realizes it's her. And then it cuts to a shot of the
how gutted would you be also?
And he looks sad.
He looks sad, but also I'm just saying, like, look, if I was cracking on with someone and we'd had a great night in a Nordic spa of a boat and then they tried to shoot me, I'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's what
that's not cool. Yeah, what the hell? But he was like, yeah, makes sense. I'm really sad.
I think there's a problem with all the relationships in this. So there's a problem there where there's no chemistry. But the main sort of relationship in Point Break is the relationship between Johnny Utah and Bodhi, and this friendship that they build that is ultimately kind of broken, kind of not by the end. Like, it's very complicated. At the end of Point Break, you don't really know. Well, you do know where Keanu Reeves stands at the end because he lets Bodhi go, ultimately to his death, which he knows is going to happen, but he doesn't want to let Bodhi be caged. And Johnny Utah throws his FBI badge in the sea as he walks off on the beach because he's had enough, and Bodhi has changed him.
What?
Yeah.
Did that happen in the 2015 movie?
No.
Oh, that's what I thought you were saying.
No.
I was
I'm talking about the original now.
Yeah.
So the core relationship between Johnny Utah and Bodhi is what drives the film. And there is a scene in the original, very famous scene. And if you've watched Hot Fuzz, you'll know the scene.
Have you never shot your gun up in the air and gone, ah?
Exactly. Where Johnny Utah is giving chase to Bodhi. He knows that Bodhi is the man behind the mask that he is chasing after they've robbed a bank. and he's got an old injury from his football days. His knee gives way. He's lying on the ground as Patrick Swayze is climbing up a fence.
With the president's mask
And
on.
he's got an opportunity to shoot him. And then you get a close-up of Bodhi's eyes looking at him. You get a close-up of Johnny Utah's eyes looking back. And he can't bring himself to shoot him. And he shoots his gun up in the air and goes, ah.
He goes, ah! Ah! So that's it, right? That point that it's like, it's literally like the and then a pause and then a They literally copied that beat for beat in this 2015 one, which I was just a bit like, look, if you want to be doing homages to the original, let's be a little subtle. Do give Johnny Utah the same board, for example. There's like, in my head anyway, it's like a very famous image of the board that Keanu Reeves had, because it's like a stupid like reddy pinky yellow bit with like black flames, and like I think even Tyler like makes a comment on it, like that could have been a nice little, you know, something, maybe just like a red and a yellow board or whatever, like, but like that iconic scene, I just was like, no, you
But
leave
also,
that scene alone.
But also, it's the example of don't do something and then make it so much more inferior. The part of the problem with this is that, as I was talking about that core relationship, is that I don't believe that Johnny Utah and Bodhi in this film are friends at all. There is like, they go from 0 to 100, and it's very similar to Samsara. There is no build up, there is no chemistry whatsoever. I don't understand in this film why Johnny Utah would not just shoot Bodhi, because there is no reason for him not to. Because they don't seem like that good friends. They've not really bonded.
But I think the reason why maybe they kind of get away with that is because ultimately, before they shoot all the police officers at the bank on the top of the mountain, they're not really hurting anyone doing what they're doing. They're doing these like big natural challenges that could get themselves killed. And then they're like little Robin Hoods giving back to the poor. So like,
I don't know.
I think maybe there's a bit of conflict there. No, but I'm speaking as Johnny Utah. In his head, he's like, they're trying to do a good thing.
My response to that is the scene where Johnny Utah fires his gun up in the air and goes, right, is he has just blown up a gold mine, causing a huge landslide, a huge CGI landslide.
No one died, though.
Well,
he injured one of the drivers.
We say that, right? Because I thought there's a moment in that scene where Johnny Utah, I mean, we have to assume, I think the film wants you to assume that they're alive, but Johnny Utah is helping these two drivers. He's like, because he tells Bodhi to freeze and he doesn't. He gets on a bike and rides off. And Johnny Utah like helps these guys to like a point and then gets on a bike and rides off. And where they've just been standing, the next shot, it's like, I'm like, I said out loud to myself, I was like, those guys are dead. Like, they just are.
Might as well have left
I
them,
think
Johnny.
we're supposed to assume that they're alive, but
yeah, but do you know what I mean? Whereas the Bodhi in the original film, they're literally just like robbing banks and shooting people. Like they
don't. They don't kill anyone.
Yes, they do.
No, they only kill one when it goes wrong.
And Bodhi gets all his friends killed by the end of it. They were
by the
dropping
end,
off.
but not at the point where Johnny Utah is shooting in the air and going,
No, but they are like they are arguably more like villainous. I guess that's even a word.
I thought that until the bank scene where they are just spraying machine gun bullets everywhere.
Well, yes, but I'm saying Bodhi in the original film, like there are casualties. He does get his friend killed. He does kidnap Tyler. That whole fucking scene is really dark. There is a lot about the original one that if you were Johnny Utah, you'd be like, this is objectively a bit of a madman who's just trying to finance his surf trips around the world and doesn't really care about the chaos that he leaves in his trail. Whereas with the Bodhi in the new film, you're like, he is just trying to do these 8 natural ordeals or whatever, and he's giving back along the way, and he hasn't hurt anyone, and he's kind of a cool guy. I don't really want to shoot him. I just feel he has to go to prison because it's my job. So like, I almost get the turmoil more there, but because Bodhi and Johnny in the original film go through more together and build that relationship more and have more genuine conversations, you believe their relationship more.
I also think there's a problem with, and I don't think, to be honest, I don't think it's either of the actors' fault in the new one. I think the script, some of the dialogue in this is
not good.
Piss poor.
I wrote a quote down actually when he's talking to the FBI agents, and he goes, "He's Luke Bracey," and he's like, "It's gonna get ugly," and then the head of the FBI is like, "Ugly is what we do, son." It's just like, good God.
But I do think there's a problem with the fact that, I mean, maybe you're right on the sort of the moral end of things, but like in the original film, Patrick Swayze you can see how Johnny Utah gets sucked into Bodhi because Patrick Swayze has this like charisma and charm in that film. Like he is so cool in that film. That it's like you can see how you would get sucked in. And on the other end, like it's a young Keanu Reeves doing he's funny and likable and slightly dorky in the film, and he's cool at the same time, and like you love the characters more, and you so it's not just the case of like those two characters having chemistry, but it's also just like, I think as an audience member you love the characters more, which is why it impacts more when Bodhi does go mad at the end of the film and he's getting everyone killed, and because it feels like you get the same gut punch in a way that like Johnny Utah does when it all goes to shit.
It's almost like in Thelma and Louise where you see them going down this path and you're like, just stop, please, just stop. And they can't and they don't. Like it is that, it's painful to watch. Whereas this one is just a bit more like, oh.
Because there's the key moment in the original Point Break where you know it's all going wrong, where Bodhi has kidnapped
Tyler,
and he forces Johnny Utah to come along with him on the bank job. And usually they never go to the vault. They only take cash because it's quick and they can get in and get out. But at that point, Bodhi says, we're going to the vault and we're getting the money from the vault. And that's when you know he's lost it and this is not going to end well for any character. And that's when the police arrive and one of them gets shot, and there's a undercover detective in the bank who or like an off-duty cop in the bank who like gets shot, and it just all goes to shit. And you feel that, like that moment you feel like, oh fuck it, like if only he'd have stopped. And Johnny Utah has that line where he's like, you've gone too far, you've broken your own rules, all that kind of stuff. And there's not really any moment in this film where you feel that. Like there feels like it feels like this film feels like an interconnected series of impressive stunts that they filmed, impressive little Red Bull films they filmed. And it's just like, how do we get now to the rock climbing? How do we get to the wingsuit jumping? And there feels like no progression for the characters. Do you know what I mean? And
it's just nonsensical narrative as well, of like the ordeals being like the breath of fire, the birth of wind, whatever, and then it's like somehow he works out where they're next going to be, because he's like, the first 6 are going down and then the second 2 are going up, and so they're gonna be some, and this is the only one that isn't in the jurisdiction of the United States of America, so they must be in Venezuela, because also Bodhi was born there. And I was like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Like, if I was his chief, I would have just been like, you've lost it. Go take a long weekend. Yeah. So, like, it was just poor. It was a very weak plot, and I would not have finished this film if I didn't have to for the podcast.
Your orders were to investigate and report.
I'd earned their trust, sir, and I wanted to be sure they were the suspects.
So your MO is to help them commit another crime?
No, not at all. I wanted to stop them.
Yeah.
And I tried to stop them. Bodhi doesn't see these as crimes.
He thinks of them as offerings.
What the hell does that even mean?
These guys are trying to complete the Ozaki 8. They see that as a gift given to them from the Earth. To balance out that gift, they want to give back something that was taken from the Earth. This case was gold ore that was ripped out of the ground.
Now, you've been undercover, what, 2 weeks? You know how easy it is to lose perspective, son? What happened here? You got too close to these individuals. You did exactly what I told you not to do.
I want to catch these guys, sir. Just like you. But they're not common criminals. They just don't see themselves that way. They've taken Ozaki's ideas to the extreme. They think they're crusaders with a worthy cause. They're more than willing to die for it.
What Catherine Bigelow was able to do at Point Break is she was able to make a 90s action film that sort of undercuts the usual machismo and like hard masculine edges of a 90s action film with these real moments of heart and these proper characters that you believe in and that you love, and by the end of the film you don't know where you stand on them, but you still kind of love them.
Yeah, and it was funny and it was exciting and it was beautiful and it was sexy and her film was so many things. Like you can't put that film in a box. That's why it's still being shown like all of these years later in cinemas. Like people love that film, but it's like, let's say it, it is what it is. Making remakes is hard. It is hard. And
it's also, maybe it's unfair because Catherine Bigelow has shown, not just with Point Break, but with the films she's done since, Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, like, Catherine Bigelow has shown herself to be like an incredible film director, like, a proper talent, right? And, maybe it's unfair. That's a big thing to try and emulate, It's a big
How
task,
many films had Erickson Core done before this?
He's done quite a few, I think. He did the sort of the G.I. Joe film.
Oh yeah.
Which wasn't great. He's only done one film since. He did the 2003. He was a cinematographer for a while.
Is he like
notably on the 2003 Daredevil film with Ben Affleck. Yeah, I maybe it's unfair to compare someone who is essentially a kind of a
directing icon,
an action film director with someone who is a huge talent, but then don't step into don't try and step into those shoes. Like, if you can't do it.
Ouch. Should we wrap this up? Should we do final thoughts? And should we rate this film? James, how do you rate this film?
Out of 5
Ozaki ordeals.
I was going to say 5 Teresa Palmer boob shots, but am I allowed to rate it 0?
Yes. We've never had a 0. Listeners,
maybe
this is
unfair.
our first 0.
Unfair? It is my least favorite film we've done, and considering we watched the fucking breakup, like,
I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed this. There was still
one scene in the breakup which I genuinely loved, which was the singing scene.
Yeah.
So there was no scene in this that I loved. I will give it a 0.5, and I'll give it the 0.5 for the effort they went to on those stunts. It doesn't get a full 1 because I think they kind of ruined the stunts, as I pointed out earlier, with the sort of the bad CGI that was sort of mixed in with them. But I'll give it a 0.5 on the basis of the stunt work.
We didn't even touch base on the acting in this film. I don't believe there was a single well-acted scene in this entire film.
Yeah, and I don't think you can necessarily like pin the blame on the actors involved because, like I said, I think the screenplay it's not good.
It is poor, but I do think, like, especially with the Bodhi character, because he is just so, like, doesn't give a fuck. I really felt like Edgar Ramirez probably could have done more there in terms of, like, showing the mania behind the man, you know? Like,
Yeah.
And that scene
And
on the
it lacked
boat
any charm.
no charm. There was no, like, charisma really around it. Maybe a little bit in the initial scenes when you first meet him and he's speaking very quietly on the boat and all the other lads are a bit more like, you know, machismo like that. I was a bit intrigued then, and then it sort of instantly was lost. But that last scene on the boat with Johnny Utah, when he was like, if you go in there, Brody, you're not coming out. And then he's like, and isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Like, points of the way. And I was just like, that was so hollow. That delivery was so empty and poor.
In that 91, the original Point Break, that scene makes me well up like every time.
One of the most amazing scenes ever. Yeah. And so I just, it's really hard to find something in this film
Do you want to know
is redeemable
who they considered casting?
Instead of Edgar Ramirez.
And instead of Luke Bracey.
Yeah, go on.
So for Bodhi, actors that were considered for the role, that doesn't mean they would have done it if
or
they'd
even
have been
auditioned.
asked,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
even auditioned, because, you know, I can't imagine some of these actors would have done.
Okay, who?
Tom Hardy. So Bodhi, Tom Hardy,
Yeah.
Colin Farrell,
Oh, no.
Hugh Jackman,
No.
Jeremy Renner,
Mm.
Chris Hemsworth. I could see that. I could see Chris Hemsworth doing it. And Garrett Hedlund. For the role of Johnny Utah, actors that were considered were Taylor Kitsch, Nicholas Hoult,
Interesting.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, Chris Pine, Chris Pratt,
No.
and Sam Claflin.
Claflin.
Claflin, yeah. I always pronounce it Claflin.
No, he's too chiseled.
I think
you want
Nicholas
someone,
Hoult
a bit nerdy, a bit.
would be brilliant alongside Chris Hemsworth as Bodhi. I could completely see that.
Chris Hemsworth, maybe. Who? There was someone else that you said.
Tom Hardy was also considered.
No, not Tom Hardy.
Colin Farrell, Hugh Jackman, Jeremy Renner.
As Bodhi?
Yeah.
Maybe Jeremy Renner. Because I like the charm of both of the characters really is that they're not supposed to. I mean, like, look, don't get me wrong. I could look at young Keanu Reeves all day, every day. I could look at young Patrick Swayze all day, every day. But they're not necessarily supposed to be these like completely dreamy, chiseled, perfect looking men. The point is that they're both really supposed to kind of be everyday guys of, you know, that Keanu Reeves could be an undercover FBI agent, or that, I mean, he bloody couldn't stick out like a sore thumb.
Nicholas Hoult would have been inspired casting, personally.
That would have been great. I think he would have done it really well as, like, yeah, I think it would have been good. Yeah, I don't think the casting was good at all in this. And do you know what? Teresa Palmer is a bloody good actor.
Yeah, well, she has nothing to do. And it's a bit like
she's
Ray
nothing to do.
To be honest, I've seen Ray Winstone put in better performances. And, like,
yeah,
you know, he, again, had nothing to do. You know, you think of Gary Busey's character in the original, like, he has tons to do. Like, it's, you know, he is...
Gary Busey was just phenomenal.
The whole thing with the sandwiches. And anyway.
Right, yeah.
What are you rating it? I gave it 0.5 out of 5.
Do you know what? Yeah. I'm going to rate it 0.5 bird tattoos on Teresa Palmer. Because I would also give this film 0 if I could, but I think because also we both sort of work in this world, we can appreciate that
how hard it is to make a film.
And how much work goes into them, and that it is people's life and souls and, you know, blood and sweat and tears. And so I'd feel awful giving a film a 0, but this was not an enjoyable watch. And it's not, you know, like the Private Eye wasn't an enjoyable watch, but it's a fucking good piece of film. Whereas this was not enjoyable. What did I say? Private Eye.
Private Eye.
That's because I just bought a Private
Eye. Here's a question before we choose our next film. Here's a question: would this film be better stripped of, if it wasn't a Point Break remake, would you be less annoyed about this film? Because that's what I was wondering when I was watching it. I was like, am I like forcing myself to hate it because I'm so like angry about the idea of them remaking like a classic?
No, I think standalone it is an objectively shitty film.
Okay, so now we're at the point in the podcast where we dive into the credits and we pick 3 crew members. One of us has picked 3 crew members. This week it is Elsa's turn to pick the crew members. I do not know, and she goes into their filmography.
And I've selected a movie.
And I do not know what film that is associated with which crew member. So, Elsa, do you want to tell me the crew members that I have to choose from this week?
I will say beforehand, I haven't done a wild card this week because this film was so bad.
We've got to pull ourselves out of the depths.
I've chosen 3 films that I think are good. Yeah, and I think you may. I know for a fact that you have seen at least one of them.
Okay,
but I haven't.
Okay,
and I know that you'll really want to talk about it. So,
okay, what do I like it or do I not like it?
We'll find out. Okay. So, as an homage to the stunts in this film, I have, of course, picked one of Johnny's stunt doubles, Riley Harper.
Okay.
We haven't had a best boy grip yet, so I've put in best boy grip Massimiliano De Sena.
Not going to remember that name, but
Massimiliano. Yeah, I said it right. Massimiliano. Isn't that a fantastic name?
Yeah.
Massimiliano De Sena, best boy grip. And then the second AD for their Italy shoot, Alessandra Fortuna.
Okay, I'm going to pick, because of the name alone, and you're right, we haven't had a best boy grip yet, Massimiliano De Sena.
So the film that we will be doing next week is House of Gucci.
Fuck me. I have no desire to see that film.
Our name's Sweetie. I've seen the trailer like 5 times.
Oh, Jared Leto doing his like... Didn't he win a Razzie? Did Jared Leto win a Razzie?
I don't know, did he?
For that performance in House of Gucci.
Really?
Yeah. And they were complaining so much that he'd been snubbed at the Oscars. Like, he was so shocked that he didn't get an Oscar nomination. And then he ended up getting a Razzie for, like, worst actor.
Oh,
for that film.
That's what you get, Jared.
Don't Jared Leto.
Yeah, that's why I was like, that's what you get, Jared.
Cool. Right. So, well, join us next week.
You're going to be gutted when you hear the
I know. You got me with the name, you know? You sounded so good. Join us next time for our review
of the House of Gucci.
Of the House of Bloody Gucci.
With Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.